They were so sure I was finished. My daughter and her husband had already divided up my life before I even had a chance to fight for it. Then they showed up at the hospital, not to hold my hand, not to pray beside me, but to ask about the house. My bed was empty when they arrived, only a letter on the pillow. When they read what I had written, the color drained right out of their faces. I didn't see it coming. That is what keeps me up some nights, even now, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea gone cold. The stroke hit on a Tuesday morning in February, the kind of morning we get in Sudbury, where the sky is the same gray as the pavement, and the cold presses through every crack in the walls. I was shoveling the front walk, something my daughter had been after me to stop doing for 2 years, and then I was on the ground. I remember the scratch of ice against my cheek. I remember thinking, absurdly, that I had not finished my coffee. And then nothing. When I woke up in Health Sciences North, I did not know right away where I was. The ceiling tiles were water-stained in one corner. There was a machine beeping somewhere to my left, and the smell of the place, antiseptic and cafeteria food and something else I could not name, sat heavy in the air. My right hand would not move the way I told it to. My speech came out slurred for the first few hours, which terrified me more than anything else. I had been a high school history teacher for 31 years. Words were my whole life. The nurse who came in first was a young woman named, well, I will leave her out of it, because she was kind, and this is not her story. She told me I had survived a significant ischemic stroke. She said the care team would be in to explain more. She asked if there was someone she should call. My daughter, I said, or tried to say. Joanna. She nodded and made a note. I lay back and waited, the way you wait for the other shoe to drop when you already know it is coming, even if you cannot say exactly why you know. The doctor came and went, explaining things I absorbed in pieces. My left side had taken the worst of it. Physiotherapy would start within days. Recovery was possible, meaningful recovery, but I would need support at home in the near term. He said it carefully, the way doctors do when they mean something they are not quite willing to say plainly. Is my daughter here? I asked. He glanced at the nurse who had followed him in. Something passed between them, quick and careful. We've been trying to reach her, he said. We'll keep trying. I did not press him. I turned my head toward the window. Outside, a parking lot. Beyond that, spruce trees and a flat white sky. I thought about my wife Patricia, who had died 4 years earlier of pancreatic cancer. I thought about how she used to say that when the hard times came, you found out who was made of what. I had thought I knew. I had been certain of it. The doctor came back that evening. He sat down, which is never a good sign. Mr. Whitfield, he said, I did reach your daughter. I explained the situation. I was very clear that it was serious. He paused. He was looking at the far wall. She said she would try to come when things settled down. Try to come, I repeated. Yes, when things settled down. That's what she said. I looked at my hands, the right one still not fully obeying me, resting on the sheet like something that belonged to someone else. Joanna, my daughter. The person I had driven 4 hours to Prince George the weekend, her marriage fell apart, sitting up until 2 in the morning while she cried into a mug of chamomile. The person whose university tuition I had paid without hesitation, both undergrad and the master's degree, she decided she wanted 3 years later. The person I had co-signed a line of credit for when she and her second husband, Derek, were just getting back on their feet. Try to come when things settled down. Okay, I said. Thank you for letting me know. He stayed a few more minutes, said some things I did not really hear. After he left, I lay in the dark with the monitor beeping, and a porter's cart rattling down the hall, and the sound of someone else's television leaking under the door. I thought about letting go. Not dramatically, not as a decision exactly. More like a door I noticed was open and wondered whether I had the energy to close it. I was 68 years old, and I was alone in a hospital room, and the person who was supposed to be my family had said she would try. Then I thought about Patricia's roses. She had planted them along the back fence this spring, before she got sick, a row of climbers she had ordered from a nursery in the Okanagan. She never saw them bloom properly, but I had kept them going, 4 winters now, wrapping them in burlap in November, unwrapping them in April, feeding them and watching them, and talking to them the way you talk to things that cannot answer back when there is no one else to talk to. They were mine now in a way that was hard to explain. Giving up felt like leaving them to die too. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. It took me 2 tries with my left hand. I called my friend, a man named Colin, who I had known since we were both 22 and working summer construction in Timmins. Colin was the kind of person who answered the phone at 11 at night without making you feel like you had done something wrong. I heard, he said before I finished explaining. Janet called me. Your neighbor Janet. She saw the ambulance. It was a stroke, I said. A bad one, they think, but I am talking. I am here. Of course you are, he said. You're the most stubborn man I know. Joanna isn't coming. Silence on his end. The kind of silence that means someone is choosing their words carefully. She said she'd try, I told him. When things settled down. Those were the exact words the doctor gave me. That's her husband talking, Colin said. Derek has had his eye on that house for 2 years. You know that. I did know it. I had known it and refused to let myself fully believe it because she was my daughter. But I had noticed the way Derek's eyes moved around my living room when they visited. The way he mentioned, twice, that property values in the Muskoka corridor were climbing. The way Joanna had started every phone call in the past year with some version of Dad. Have you thought about what you're going to do with the place? The place. As if it were a storage unit. As if Patricia had not picked out every piece of furniture. As if I had not built the back deck myself over 3 weekends in 2009. As if 40 years of a life did not live in those walls. I need you to call someone for me, I said to Colin. A woman named Beverly Marsh. She's a lawyer. She did my will a few years back. I need her number and I need her to come see me as soon as she can. Done, he said. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it is time to make some changes. Beverly came on Thursday afternoon, a compact woman in her 60s with gray-streaked hair she wore, pulled back and reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck. She had done wills and estates in Sudbury for 30 years. She sat down, opened her briefcase and said, without preamble, Colin told me the basics. What do you want to do? I told her. She listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, looking at her notes. You can do all of this, she said. Some of it we can execute while you're here. Some will require you to be present at the office. But the primary changes to the estate documents, yes, I can begin drafting today. How long? A week. If you need it faster, I can prioritize. I need it faster. She nodded, made another note. And you're certain? I have to ask. I have been certain, I said. Since Tuesday night. She left and I leaned back against the pillow and felt something I had not expected to feel. Not anger, not grief, though both were there underneath. What I felt sitting in that hospital room in Sudbury in February was clarity. The particular cold clarity that comes when you stop pretending. Colin called that evening. He had his own news. I ran into your son-in-law at Canadian Tire this afternoon, he said. He didn't know I'd spoken to you. He was telling anyone who'd listen that you were in rough shape, that it was touch and go. Colin paused. You're not touch and go, are you? No, that's what I thought. He also mentioned very casually that Joanna was already looking at what the next steps might be. His words. I closed my eyes. Next steps. Did you know, I said, that I paid for their furnace 2 winters ago? Joanna called me and said they had no heat and I drove to the bank and transferred $4,000 that same afternoon. I did not know that. I never told anyone. Because that is what you do when it is your child. Yeah, Colin said. She never paid it back. I never asked her to. I kept thinking the person I raised was still in there somewhere, and I did not want to be the kind of father who made her feel indebted. You weren't that kind of father. No, I agreed. I was the other kind. The kind who kept giving until there was nothing left to take, and then they looked for more. He was quiet for a moment. So what's the plan? The plan, I said, is that they're going to show up here. Probably in the next day or two, once they've figured out I'm actually recovering. They'll be all concern and apology, and Joanna will probably cry a little. And they'll want to talk about the house, and I will already be gone, and there will be a letter. Colin was quiet again. Then slowly he started to laugh. Not mean-spirited, just the laugh of a man who has known you for 46 years and recognizes the look on your face even through a phone. Okay, he said, what do you need from me? The physiotherapy was brutal. I will not pretend otherwise. 3 sessions a day, my right hand learning again how to grip a pen, my balance relearning its own geometry. The physiotherapist was a young man, patient in a way that reminded me of the best students I had taught, the ones who came back to a problem not because they had to, but because something in them would not let it go. He did not pity me, which I respected. I worked. I slept. I called Beverly twice with adjustments. I called Colin every evening, and I wrote the letter. It took me 4 drafts. My handwriting was not what it was, the right hand still unreliable, so I typed it on my phone and printed it at the nurse's station with their printer they kept for patient use. I read it twice. I changed 2 sentences. Then I folded it and put it in the envelope Colin had brought me with the other things from my house. Along with my good sweater and a photograph of Patricia, I had asked him to take from the bedroom dresser. On the 8th day, I was cleared to leave. The team was pleased with my progress. They said so several times, in slightly different ways, as if they expected me to disagree. I didn't. I felt the progress in my hand and my balance, in the way words came out of my mouth without the terrifying half-second delay of the first days. I sat on the edge of the bed and put on my own clothes, which felt significant in a way I could not quite articulate, and I put Patricia's photo in the inside pocket of my coat, against my chest. I placed the envelope on the pillow. Colin picked me up at the side entrance. His Silverado idled in the cold, and he had the heat up, and there was a thermos of coffee in the cup holder with my name on a piece of masking tape, which made me laugh for the first time in 8 days. We drove and I drank the coffee and I watched Sudbury move past the windows, the gray and brown of February, the piles of snow along the curbs gone dark with road salt, the Tim Hortons on every other corner, the Canadian Shield pushing up through everything like it always does, permanent and indifferent and somehow reassuring. You sure about this? Not challenging. Just asking. No, I said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. He nodded. Fair enough. We did not go to my house, we went to his. I had asked to borrow his guest room for a week. He had said, with the brevity of a man who does not need to make a speech about these things, of course, stay as long as you need. It was late afternoon when my phone rang. Joanna's name on the screen. I looked at it for 2 rings, 3, then answered, Dad. Her voice was strange. A little airless, like she had been caught mid-breath. Dad, we're at the hospital. We're at Health Sciences North. Where are you? I'm out, I said. Out? They let you. When did you? This morning. Why didn't you call us? And there it was, a threat of accusation already. The slight edge of someone who is indignant because the situation has not gone the way they planned. We drove up from Barrie, Dad. We've been in the car since 7 this morning. I thought about saying several things. I said, I left something for you at the hospital, on the pillow in my room. Silence. The letter explains everything, I said. Take care of yourselves. I ended the call. My hand was steadier than I expected. The call came back 6 minutes later. I did not answer. Then Derek's number, which I declined as well. Then Joanna again. I set the phone face down on Colin's kitchen table and watched it buzz against the wood. Colin put a bowl of soup in front of me, without comment, and I ate it. And outside the kitchen window the last of the afternoon light was going purple over the snowbanks, and a pair of chickadees were picking at the suet feeder he kept hung from the eaves. The next morning Joanna's texts came through in a cluster, the way they do when someone has been composing and deleting and rewriting all night. Dad, please call me back. We need to talk about this. Beverly Marsh called us. Dad, you can't just, this is our family. I know I wasn't there right away and I'm sorry. I was scared. Derek said we should wait until we knew more, but I should have come anyway, I know that. I read them twice. The third to last one I read several times. I was scared. Derek said we should wait. There it was. She was scared. And Derek said to wait, and she listened to him instead of to 38 years of knowing me. That was the thing I could not unknot. Not the decision itself, though that had cut me deeply. The particular shape of the decision. The fact that her husband's voice had been louder in that moment than her own heart. I thought about that for a long time. About the ways we raise our children, all the things we mean to teach them, and all the things that slip through anyway. I had tried to raise Joanna to be independent, to trust herself. Somewhere that had gone sideways. I was not entirely sure I was not part of the reason. I called Beverly. They've been in touch, she confirmed. Your son-in-law was quite forceful. He mentioned legal challenges. What do you think? I think the documents are airtight, she said, in the tone of a woman who has made airtight documents for 30 years and knows exactly what they look like. He has no grounds. The Muskoka property transfer is already processed. The charitable designation on the estate is ironclad. There's nothing to challenge. The Muskoka property, a small cabin on a lake north of Huntsville that my father had left me and that I had maintained for decades, which Derek had mentioned with particular interest on more than one occasion, had been transferred the previous week to a conservation land trust. The house in Sudbury was going to a local hospice organization that provided in-home palliative care. I had received care in my life. I knew what it was worth. And the personal accounts? I asked. The distributions have been drafted as you instructed. The scholarship fund at your old school is established. The hospice donation is confirmed. There's a remainder for your personal care going forward, held in trust and administered independently. She paused. You've been very thorough. I had time to think, I said. I called Joanna back that afternoon. I did not plan to, exactly. I was sitting in Colin's living room with a physiotherapy exercise, squeezing a small rubber ball, over and over, the most unglamorous form of rebuilding, and I found myself dialing before I had fully decided to. She answered on the first ring, Dad. Her voice was exhausted. I got your texts, I said. I'm so sorry. And she did sound sorry. That was the complicated thing. She sounded genuinely, miserably sorry. Not sorry because the money was gone, though maybe that was part of it, but sorry in the way you are when you know you have done something you cannot take back. I know you are, I said. I believe you are. Then why? Because sorry doesn't rewind Tuesday night, I said. It doesn't change what you said to the doctor, or what you didn't say. And it doesn't change the fact that when your husband told you to wait, you waited. You chose him over your own judgment, and your own judgment should have told you to get in the car. She was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing. I don't know what to do now, she finally said. I don't either, I told her. But that's something you'll have to work out for yourself. I'm not in a position to keep solving things for you. I never should have been for as long as I was. That's something I have to take responsibility for. I heard her breath catch at that. Maybe she had expected more anger. Maybe anger would have been easier to push back against. What I was offering her was something harder, honesty and the absence of a rescue. Are we going to be okay? She asked. I don't know, I said. Maybe, in time. But not right now. I ended the call, squeezed the rubber ball 3 more times. Outside, a snowplow was grinding down Collins Street, the familiar sound of a Canadian winter making way for itself. 3 weeks later, I was back in my own house. Colin had come over twice while I was at his place, checking on things, bringing in the mail. The pipes had held. Patricia's roses were under their burlap along the back fence, waiting. The kitchen still smelled like the coffee I had left unfinished when I went down on the front walk, a smell that had gone stale and then faded, and then was just the house again. I made a fresh pot. I sat at the kitchen table, the February light coming through the window at a low angle the way it does this time of year, catching the dust on the counter and making it look almost like something deliberate. My right hand was not what it was, but it was improving, and I could hold a cup without trouble now, and I could sign my name, and I could do the crossword in the morning, which seemed important to me out of all proportion to its actual importance. There was a letter on the table in front of me, not the one I had left for Joanna and Derek. This was a different one, that had arrived from Riverside Secondary, the school where I had taught for most of my career. It was from the principal, a woman who had been my student once, 30 years ago, who sat in the second row and argued with everything I said and became, by the end, one of the best critical thinkers I had ever taught. She was writing to let me know the scholarship fund had received its first applications. She said the students who were applying had written essays about their families, about sacrifice, about what history teaches us about the kind of people we want to become. She said the fund was already changing things. I read it twice and then I put it in the drawer of the kitchen table, next to an old photograph of Patricia and me at the cabin. The summer we had bought it, both of us sunburned and laughing at something I could no longer remember. I thought about what she would have said about all of it. I thought she would have said something pithy and accurate that I would have pretended to find excessive and then thought about for 2 weeks afterward. I missed her with the particular permanent ache of missing someone who knew you well enough that their absence leaves a shaped hole. But I was here. My hand was learning. The roses were waiting under their burlap. And somewhere a student I had never met was writing an essay about what it meant to earn something, and maybe, in a small way, it would mean something. Colin came by in the afternoon with a bag of groceries and the real reason for the visit, which was to check on me without making a production of it. We drank coffee at the kitchen table, talking about things that had nothing to do with Strokes or daughters or Derek or documents. Hockey, the sorry state of the highway between here and Timmins, the suet feeder a bear had gotten into the previous spring. After he left, I sat for a while in the quiet. The house made its small sounds, the furnace cycling, the fridge humming, the faint groan of the structure settling against the cold. All the sounds that had been there all along, underneath everything else, patient and steady. I picked up the rubber ball from the counter and began to squeeze it, one hand and then the other. And outside the kitchen window, the light was going golden and thin across the snow, the way it does in February in northern Ontario, when it bothers to come at all, rare and low and honest. I was not done yet. Not even close.